Hiya, Squirt. So lately the term open world has been inseparable with the biggest video game releases, yet also oddly avoided in video game marketing. And I don't mean odd in terms of why some companies are trying to put more distance between their releases and the term open world. That much is obvious. I mean, people have been going on and on about open world fatigue for nigh on a decade at this point. No, I mean odd in terms of what some companies are doing to avoid saying the term open world, even when it's clearly applicable. That new Zelda game? No, that's not open world. That's open air, because while you're playing, you'll be flying through the air a lot. Oh yeah, Sonic? No, Sonic isn't open world. Sonic is an open zone type game, because while you're playing, you gotta be in the zone to fully open yourself up to Sonic. Mario Kart World? The game we're selling off the concept of one big interconnected world that you can traverse freely? Of course that's not an open world game, you absolute buffoon. What kind of idiot would think that a game called Mario Kart World would feature an open world? Obviously, Mario Kart World is a free roam game, because if you want to roam, you can do so freely for $80. Open world is kind of this double-edged sword. On one hand, saying your upcoming release is an open world game puts it in this new league of AAA content-rich titles. I don't think anyone's ever really talked about this, but if you look closely, you'll notice that video games are pretty expensive these days. So you're clearly gonna spark some interest right off the bat when you come out saying, hey, this game is $70, but it's also going to provide you hundreds of hours of content as opposed to some bullshit baby game that you could probably finish in like 2 hours for the same price. On the other hand, whether or not you'll actually be enjoying those hundreds of hours is a different story. So many of these open world titles nowadays feel like they took a decently fun, small-scale idea, ripped it apart, and smeared its viscera across a needlessly massive map. And the gamer ladies have caught on to this, hence the aforementioned open world fatigue. So when companies come out with a new title and say it's open world, it feels like a prerequisite for the game to have any potential to sell decently while also being a massive, multi-million-dollar risk on whether or not it will actually be worth your time. 3 of Nintendo's tentpole IP have now gone open world with their most recent entries, but you won't find them referred to as such by Nintendo, and that makes sense because Nintendo doesn't want to be lumped in with these slouches. The vast majority of these dog-ass games are mediocre and forgettable at best and completely broken at worst. When Nintendo drops a title, it's gotta be evergreen. It's gotta be revolutionary. It's gotta redefine the genre by breaking its conventions, and above all, it needs to be polished to perfection. Okay, well, there's always going to be exceptions, but for the most part, they accomplish this. Breath of the Wild is considered to be a complete revolution for the open world genre, but also referring to it as open air is clearly just a marketing term to make it seem more unique, right? Sure, maybe the GameStop employee with a rat tail and a stained NES t-shirt is trying to sell you on Breath of the Wild as an open air game instead of just calling it open world, but he's also probably trying to sell you on his open marriage instead of just admitting that he's divorced. Normal people like you and me just call a spade a spade. Breath of the Wild is an open world game, and there is nothing that sick fuck Doug Bowser can do to change that. But what if Nintendo was actually betting on that word of mouth? Like I said, for all the dopamine-deficient gamer ladies out there, open-world games evoke fatigue. But to the general public, who maybe only play 1 or 2 games a year, open-world games represent the most bang for your buck. So if the common folk see this as an open-world game, and the people who play like 3 open-world games a month see it as an ever so slightly distinguished open-air game, then Nintendo can essentially have its cake and eat it too. And that brings us to the main topic of today's video, which is... Wait, what's this video about again? So the case with Mario Kart World feels a little different than Zelda. The producer for Mario Kart World said in an interview that they didn't use the term open world in development because it was too ambiguously defined. And looking at the vast array of titles that fit under that umbrella term, I can definitely agree with him. Saying your game is open world gives your audience zero insight into how the game looks, how it controls, whether or not you can drink Monster Energy in the game, the game mechanics, the genre, the traversal, how much Monster Energy is in the game feel, the side content, or if you can enjoy a refreshing beverage in the game. Like Monster Energy, open world games do come with a set of basic expectations. Broadly speaking, most open world games have stories, waypoints, or a means of interacting with the world, or ways in which the world interacts with you to indicate some form of progression. In Elden Ring, these brutally difficult bosses crush your ass into diamond. Then, 50 hours later, you come back and make a goddamn meal out of them. In Red Dead 2, you watch Arthur Morgan progress from a loyal yet violent grunt with well-functioning lungs to a man who is grappling with his own morality and, for the first time in his life, choosing to be indiscriminately kind.
Whenever we happen to meet, you're always helping people and smiling.
I guess I'm afraid.
Oh, and also his lungs don't work so good no more. Look, these are two completely different games, but their relative sense of progression in terms of narrative and gameplay is generally considered to be the benchmark when it comes to open-world titles. So which camp of open-world progression does Mario Kart fall into? How does this expansive map justify its existence? And how does this $80 game obliterate the literal and metaphorical boundaries of what we ever thought was possible in a Mario Kart game? Well, when you pick up these little coins, you get a sticker. So, I have never played a AAA open-world game with a less dynamic world than Mario Kart. Sure, you get these little P-switch challenges, and those can actually be pretty fun, but this is like tertiary quest level of engagement. Stickers are technically a cosmetic, but they're more symbolic than anything, and they are the only unlockable that is specifically tied to the open world, or, free roam. In fact, besides the costumes, which you can already unlock in regular races, they are the only form of progression in the open world, period. That's right, you don't change the world, and the world doesn't change you. It's like those fucks at Nintendo don't even listen to Eric Clapton. Which makes one think that maybe the reason Nintendo doesn't want to call this an open world, despite the concept literally being in the game's title, is because they don't want the gamer ladies to expect any of the basic content you typically get with an open world game. Meanwhile, this meaningless distinction of free roam will fly under the general public's radar, and they'll simply see this as open-world Mario Kart, a feature that will serve as their primary reason for spending $500 on an upgrade from a game that wouldn't need one otherwise. Let me make this clear. The lack of content in this map is seriously disappointing, especially for a game that was in development for almost a decade. There should absolutely be a higher standard for a higher-priced video game's selling concept. But then again, it is kind of fun. For such an empty world, it somehow kept me coming back to it for nearly 15 hours, driving around, doing menial challenges, practicing tricks, and just generally catching a vibe. The upside of not having a ton of content in this mode is that exploration is intrinsically motivated. There's nothing telling you where to go or where not to go, just the momentum of your cart in an environmental layout that prods your imagination. Ironically, by having less content, it actually manages to avoid evoking open world fatigue, at least in my experience. But the real reward for exploration is getting to hear this absolute masterpiece of a soundtrack. So, without further ado, I'll let it play us out.